Micro Machines! It's a game based on a toy that was promoted by a guy who was real good at talking fast. It's a very, very good quality series of games, isn't it? I mean, at least according to Wikipedia, apparently this is considered to be one of the greatest games of all time. Except, I'm actually not that familiar with Micro Machines. I rented the N64 game once and I have basically no memory of it, and I remember playing the Micromaniacs Flash animations on Fox Kids over and over, and I loved it to the point where I actually dressed up as one of the characters for Halloween one year. And yet I still haven't played the game. I should go and do that. Oh, and I do actually own the Micromaniacs Game Boy Color game. I do not recommend it. Heck, the only Micro Machines toy I've ever come into contact with was this weird submarine with a claw thing I had as a kid that I definitely did not just spend the past 2 hours Googling to see that this thing wasn't something I made up in a dream. And I might definitely need to have this for nostalgia reasons. Considering that apparently Micro Machines is one of the greatest games of all time, I should go and play this. And logic dictates that I should start at the beginning, with the original Micro Machines that came out in 1991. Except, plot twist, I've actually found a secret Micro Machines game. One that's not even listed as a Micro Machines game. One that predates the original Micro Machines. And you probably already know what it is because it's in the title of this video, but it's Dekoboko Densetsu on the Japanese PC Engine CD. This game is Micro Machines, except it came out a year before Micro Machines, and is only in Japanese. Yeah! Now the plot to Dekoboko Densetsu is, well, you got me. You start the game up and you're treated to a very dark screen and some awesome sound effects of someone approaching a car and slowly starting it up, and I'm not gonna lie, I feel like I'm about to watch an episode of Initial D. This is gonna be the fastest, most hype racing game ever with the best, most jammin' soundtrack, and I'll remind you this is supposed to be Micro Machines. So the intro immediately turns into this. Although I have to give credit, the driver of this weird super carmobile thing is playing Valis on his display, so props to that. Between races, you get weird cutscenes as well, showing bizarre animations of your car that are mostly goofy, and I'm just gonna drop the pretense here and tell you this is why you play the game, because the gameplay itself is a very uneven mess. Now, Dekoboko Densetsu is a series of races taking place one after the other after the other. There's no other mode, so you start on the starting line, get ready, and you go. Holding down one of the two buttons for gas, and the left and the right buttons of your D-pad turn you in place because this game kind of has tank controls. And yes, that does sound incredibly awkward, but I haven't begun to tell you how there's ice physics levels that, when you're on the ice, will register every single directional input as 3, and then delay any sort of reaction. Yeah, it's a bit messy. Oh, and what's this? We're taking a page from Bump and Jump, because now your car can jump. And that allows you to vertically avoid traps, pits, and overall obstacles. Awesome. Your goal here is to get to the end of each race, driving through rivers, going through ruins, going past hot springs with women bathing in them, fighting off all sorts of random nonsense, including snowmen with dynamite, ancient traps, and even lava that, yes, will hurt you even though you have to go into it at times. This game is insane, and it is brutally mean to you. The racing itself takes place sort of like the versus mode of Micro Machines. You cannot get too far away from the lead car or you lose a point and die. Except, in this case, the lead car is usually, more often than not, all of the other cars you're racing against because they're at the top of the screen, and you're not racing against them so much as you're racing against the screen scroll. But it gets a little strange because if you hit the back of the screen, you don't die instantly. In fact, you don't take damage at all. Sometimes? It's weird because it seems like running into the back of the wall will take half a health bar, which makes me question the point of the health bars in general. This is supposed to be a standard unit of health so you know how strong you are, but you can take damage that's below that. effectively making the display of your health entirely meaningless. In addition, when you hit the back scroll of the screen, the game will kind of spin you out and move you forward. Now this is to push you forward so that you can keep going, I hear you say, and to be fair, kinda, except that there's acceleration, so the back scroll kind of immediately catches up to you in most cases. Especially if you have to turn, because that will actually eat some of your acceleration and your inputs, because inputs in this game are more of a suggestion than a command. So you can actually hit the back scroll multiple times. The invulnerability of this will actually stop persisting even if you're in a place that will cause damage, which means you can actually chain damage just from hitting the back wall in this thing. Oh yeah, and the worst thing? The direction it decides to put you in when you hit the back wall, it's not dictated by what direction you were going in. It's not dictated by the direction the screen is scrolling. It is, as far as I can tell, entirely random, and yes, that does mean you can go backwards directly into the screen scroll, causing you to hit it twice in a row. So you have to, in a very limited period of time, while you're still accelerating, try and maneuver your car in the direction you need to go before getting hit by the wall again, even though you probably will. This is catastrophically bad, and this could be actually very easily remedied if they just stopped the screen scroll or, pushed you a little bit further up on the screen. Especially because the leader cars are not actually pushing the screen itself. The screen is scrolling at a set rate. Which actually means that the functional race of this is entirely always dictated in the last few seconds of the race, because there's no actual way to gain any sort of lead, and you will pretty much never be at the top of the screen. And if you are, you'll probably run into a rock or something. But while you're going around this first level, you might notice something a little bit weird. And not just the giant dung beetles or iron balls that are falling onto you, trying to crush you. Before you even begin the race, this game will happily set it into multiplayer mode. And while I don't normally talk about multiplayer because I'm not that kind of person, I noticed something odd. This game actually shows multi-tap support, allowing you to connect up to 5 player characters at once, which makes this an awesome party game. But hang on a tick. There's 6 racers. What's going on here? Well, aside from the fact you don't get to pick your car's color, this is the gray car. And here's a fun story. I hate him because he cheats. He actually has weapons that will actively hit you and drain your health and kill you. And he will actively flaunt that every chance he gets in the race. He is cruel and he is just so unfair. If you manage to beat a race, you get scored on where you placed. But again, all of these things are dictated in like the last milliseconds of the race itself, so good luck. But you will, depending on how you placed, get race points, which will determine your overall ranking, as well as your money. You can then use this money in a shop. What do you mean the gray car gets to start with like 20,000 gold? This shop will allow you to buy repairs for your car, because you're gonna need them, but also weapons, so you can be on even footing with the evil, horrendous gray car. Except I don't think anyone really thought this through, because while you can attack behind you, which is very helpful if you're in the front of the game, like the AI who seems to know where they're going, while you can attack in front of you to hit those AIs, yeah, they're gonna drop back and hit you. So, collisions! They're a thing in this game, and whether or not you or the enemy takes damage, no matter how square on you hit them, is a coin flip. Yay! I'm not gonna lie, I would not say this game is a fair game. And if you're playing this alone, I would say it's not a very fun game. But I think it could be a pretty wacky party game, if that's your beat. Gameplay-wise, though, it's just weird. It controls very, very sluggishly. There are levels that actively make it worse for you. And then you have to contend with the gray car, which is instantly set out to basically just kill you, and is very much equipped from the start to do so. Sure, there's a lot of weapons in the game, and even kind of a shield thing, but honestly, for the most part, you're just going to save money for repairs because everything else is out to get you. And fighting enemies, that doesn't quite work. Basically, everything about this game feels inconsistent and unpredictable, and sure, it can be a fun time if you're not taking this too seriously and maybe you've got some friends over, but for a single-player experience where you're sitting down trying to actually race, it's more going to be an exercise in frustration than anything. Although credit where credit's due, while the game itself in terms of gameplay might not be fantastic, as an import it is very import friendly. There's like 3 words in the entire game in the menus, and the rest of it's pretty much everything is depicted either with pictographs or doesn't need words at all. It's a ridiculously easy to get into game if you're just starting out with imports, so this one can be recommended on that merit. The overall presentation to Dekoboko Densetsu is probably its high point. I mean, like I said, you get these interesting little cutscenes that are very silly, very funny, and completely nonsensical. When you're in the actual gameplay itself, everything looks very clean. It's easy to tell what stuff is, and there's lots of funny little jokes. There are all sorts of crazy stuff like snowmen, women bathing at times, Rambo for some reason. And what's interesting is some of these actually have an interesting extra effect if you happen to interact with them in a certain way. I noticed that if you interact with the person Rambo is fighting, you actually get some video game gore out of this. Yeah, this game is wild. If there is one knock against the presentation I can give, there are some obstacles in this game that are a little hard to make out. Like on the first level, there are like these spikes in the ground that are very, very hard to see. For the most part, it works very well, but there are just some things that just don't look quite as clear as they probably should. I think they're definitely trying to lean into this being more of a party game than a serious racer, just by virtue of the fact that it doesn't look or feel particularly fast. And that's fine. However, I feel like if they are going for the goofy, silly racing game aspect of this, they could have leaned more into the silliness of it. About halfway through the game, I already felt like I'd seen pretty much all the tile sets, and it felt like they were repeating. And I hadn't driven in space yet, or underwater, or on the Great Wall of China, or anything. I feel like if they really wanted this to be a silly party game, they might want to have leaned a lot more into the wackiness of the premise, and also maybe made it a lot less frustrating and a lot more forgiving. Audio-wise, I think the soundtrack is pretty solid. The Ruin music, that was like level 2 or 3, very, very chill, very solid. I do think they're using the CD audio quite well, and heck, the title screen even gets a sing-along. I mean, it's in Japanese, but, you know, I think the presentation at its core is probably the high point of Dekoboko Densetsu, and it's certainly good for what it is. Now, if you want a copy of Dekoboko Densetsu on the PC Engine CD, it is available for $32 plus shipping, so we'll just say 50-ish once you factor in tax and stuff. And here's where it all comes down to relativity and perception. Because, of course, if we compare this to some of the other games in my PC Engine collection, this is like a quarter to maybe even a tenth of the cost, depending on which games we're talking about. Like, these games get real expensive very quick, and the fact is, I bought this game for $20 because it looked like a cheap, interesting PC Engine game, and it was kind of fun for a little bit, despite how unfair and kind of wonky it was. This is honestly more interesting as a case study into basically a game that came before a game that it didn't inspire but was sort of similar to. Like, sometimes you'll hear about people coming up with the same idea at the same time, just randomly, and, you know, it happens. This game feels kind of like it's basically Micro Machines before Micro Machines. It's completely unrelated, and I don't think it inspired it in any way, but at the same time, it does feel like it's the predecessor. And it's not very good, if I'm being entirely honest, if you want to take this completely seriously, but as a silly, fun party game, it can be pretty fun. And if you're building out your PC Engine collection, it's cheap, and as a CD-ROM game, it can be played on any of the other regions that don't exist, because we all know that the Western PC Engine was just a myth. But you know what? This isn't a bad filler for your collection. It's not a great game, it's not a spectacular game, but hey, it's not expensive, kind of fun, and it might be a good game to bring out for a party. But you could also just bring out Micro Machines,